Welcome to the Rankled Engineer. I'd like to share my kitchen with you. I finished this about 7 or 8 months ago, and it's worked out pretty well. And as you can see from the before pictures, it was nothing like this. Real crown jewel, I love these doors for the pantry cabinets. The island came out great, as well as our concrete countertops. So let's I guess we'll start over here. Concrete countertops, they were a little more challenging than I thought they would be. We actually had to recast this large one a second time. The first time we tried inlaying some glass tile, and they actually were more buoyant in the concrete than I thought, so they weren't secured down, and the concrete worked its way under some of them, and they went out of alignment, even though we had routed in the formwork a place for them to be slotted and depressed just a little bit. And we put in a little bit of hot glue, just not enough hot glue. Wasn't enough when you start vibrating the concrete, gets underneath, and obviously concrete's fairly dense, so the buoyancy is pretty severe. We put in this dish drying rack, which we both really like. These are some 3/8 steel rod, 3/8 by 1 inch stainless steel that we cast in to the formwork. Again, we glued them down onto the form. I used some melamine to make the ramps, the wedges, and then we cast in place all that stuff. The main countertop's in 3 pieces. One to give us a chance at this thin spot to avoid cracking. And it looks, it came out fairly clean. I like the little detail, giving us more depth behind the sink and the faucet. Works out really well for us. Found this country style stainless steel sink at a reasonable price. I'm not a big fan of the under counter sinks. I do prefer over the counter, but with the concrete edge, we were able to go ahead and do this, and it's actually worked really well. And actually, the price was just unbelievable, and that's why we ended up with that particular sink, and it's worked out really well. I learned a lot from the concrete countertops. I know a lot about concrete, but I'm not a finisher. So we did cast these face down and then flip them over. I made a template out of cardboard or paper, and then I transferred that to some of the cypress, really thin 1/8 inch sheets. Used that to really hone in the template, and then we used that to make our forms out with melamine on the ground. The concrete mix was just quickcrete, the bright turquoise blue teal bag for their concrete countertop mix. I do have a mixer that lets me mix 2 bags at a time, so 100 pounds worth of mix. It was a little inconsistent, and I did not weigh the powder dry, which you should do just to make sure you're getting the same amount of material in every load. And it seemed like I'd throw in a little water and all of a sudden it would go really thin, and other ones it would take a lot of water to go thin. So when you're mixing colorant in there and things like that, you kind of want it to be consistent. I think we did a pretty good job. The smaller pieces, this end piece came out like the perfect color and texture. This big piece in the center, we couldn't get, the vibration just didn't work well enough in there. And I have a large concrete vibrator that I would use along the edges that gave us a pretty good profile. So we ended up, through a lot of trial and error, using black grout as kind of a wash to try and fill this in and smooth it out and fill in some of these pores. It's still not perfect. And then when we would acid wash to prep for the sealant, and I used an Omega sealer, which seems to be the best on the market, and it was really easy. Lots of instructions, but if you follow them, it's not a problem. The black grout would wash out a little. So it was kind of a cat and mouse game of trying to get the grout in, get it wet sanded, get it etched, and then get the sealant on. But once we got to where we were okay with it, and maybe someday we might eventually replace it with something new. A side note, when you etch the concrete in preparation for the sealant, you typically use a muriatic acid or a grout cleaner. That will start the corrosion process on even stainless steel. So I just rubbed some shortening over the stainless and then put some plastic over it the best I could, etched away, and then lots and lots of water, and then rubbed it down with some baking soda and water to try and repassivate that surface and just neutralize any of the acids that may have been left, because muriatic acid is a gaseous acid that is just in the water. So as soon as you throw it out, it starts to evaporate. So if you use grout cleaner inside, all of your stainless steel appliances will start to turn brown. So you want to stay away from that. The oven is the one that was here when we moved in. It's a pretty pricey oven. We're not a big fan of it, but it works for us. It's here. We've got this garbage that pulls out, and even enough room in the back for the garbage bags. We've got a nice garbage disposal, but what I like is this dead man switch, so it only turns on when you push it, so even if you accidentally hit the garbage disposal, it doesn't stay on. That was a fun find, a nice feature I think that everybody should use. Corner cabinet, we've got some drawers in here that pull out. Ultimately I need to build a little tray, but all you have to do is pick up that tray, pull it out, and you can get access to the pots and pans. A nice view into the dining room.
We're going to stop here for a second. This opening to the dining room used to be an exterior wall. We used a pair of LVL beams to minimize the beam depth and maximize the opening size. This really helps with the open feel of the kitchen.
We went extra deep with the cabinets in here. So there's actually a fake box back here to get our microwave out to where it needs to be. We've got the nice strip lighting, but it's also dimmable, which helps. Everything in here is 4000K lighting. And that actually hooks to a power supply that takes in, it's like 20 volt over for the controls of the dimmer through a regular switch. These pull-out shelves that we have for spice racks that we really like. They're not full yet, and we realized, lesson learned, we put larger to smaller, and really we should have gone smaller to larger shelves, because that way your big bulk bottles can sit up top and then you'd have little ones closer. So trying to use the top shelves is going to be a little interesting, although we did find we can lay down a lot of that bulk storage. So this is this part of the kitchen. All the lights are on dimmers, with the exception of these overhead lights. Got the recessed LEDs. I really like these pendant lights. I think they really tie this room together. I'll move over to my baby, which is this pantry set of doors. I will plug in for the hardwood store in Burlington, North Carolina. That's where I acquired all of the ash, or almost all of the ash, for these cabinets. It was a bit of a drive. I mean, they're several hundred miles away from Central Florida. If you live within a couple hundred miles of Burlington, North Carolina, I'm envious, because awesome selection. The price was worth it for me to drive there, and they had everything ready for me to pick up when I went up to get it in the quantities I needed, ready to go. And this was my first time actually building cabinet doors. I've finished cabinet doors, I've purchased them, but this was my first task of all these doors I made, and those doors I love. They came out so awesome. All right, so as I said, this is my baby right here, these doors. I love this 2/3 door, this door that's not quite as tall as this big one. This one's just split in half, and then I went ahead and matched the styles on them. But I picked the best pieces of wood for this cabinet, this set of cabinets, which I think half the melamine is in it and more than half the timber is in this. These are very deep cabinets that allow for lots of bulk storage. And then one of the nice features is these pull-out shelves that we have cans and baked goods and all other sorts of supplies that fit in here. So it makes the access and rotation of that stock very, very easy. I was surprised I only needed 4 hinges on these big doors, which shocked me given their size, but I think they turned out really well. There's not a lot of warping. There's when I sanded it, there's a few pieces where there's a little whoopty. I used a Diablo joining bit, which has kind of an S-curve in the center where you match those two up to create the joints here. So you do get a little bit of a reveal on this cut of the router. I used a 3.5 horsepower Milwaukee router on very low speed to make these cuts. In the ash, I was able to make I could have done it in one pass, but I did it in two. I did some hickory cabinets and I had to make this cut in like 3 or 4 router passes. And obviously a panel this big or this big is a challenge to move that much material across and make sure everything stays flat. The rails and stiles went together really well. I made sure I had a spreadsheet to get all my gaps and auto calculate the panel size, as well as the rail and stiles cuts. So this pantry's been great, and this was almost useless space before the refrigerator was here, but then very small cabinets in a horrible pantry. This allowed us to really utilize this storage space. And then the final element of the kitchen is obviously the island, which we love, and reposition the cameras and we'll take a look at that. All right, so we'll start on this side because this is the boring side of the island. These 3 cabinets are all identical, just the door swing is the only thing that's different. They take up about half of the island, which is you'd expect to be pretty normal, and these are very typical. The countertop is a granite countertop that we got. We found a local place that sold remnants, and we actually got a steal on this through some good negotiation by my wife. And one of the employees ended up just working on it on his lunch hour, and we just paid him to do the fabrication, and we paid the company for the slab, so it was like $350, which I feel like is a nice steal. It looks gorgeous. That's one of the. This kitchen was built anywhere where we could get a good deal, even if it wasn't necessarily the material we wanted. We went ahead and went for it. We've got this nice pull-out drawer for dishes, although it's supposed to have pegs to keep everything organized. And then it ends up with some nice large drawers for some big storage. We have our silverware and another small set of cabinet drawers there, and then another standard cabinet on the end. We did have outlets put in on both sides, which meant we had to trench underneath the concrete and get power to it. But it's been nice to be able to put cooking surfaces and other things out, appliances on the island. And of course it's required by code, so at least we followed that. This big piece of drawer front is made out of 2 pieces. It really should have been made out of 3 or 4. It has started to curl, so at some point I may need to refabricate that slab. But that's a minor defect. Some of the drawers are a little stiffer than others because we don't open them very often, and small drawers are just a pain to get the glides to work. And of course they're all soft close, which is nice, which is a good feature to go for. So that's our kitchen. I'll give a shot of the refrigerator and the cabinets. We ended up putting full depth cabinets up there, so we can actually fit totes up there, which is really nice. And then our countertop, or the bar top, is just green granite tile with ash on the trim. So it came out, this is definitely the center of the house. Spent the most money here and it came out really well. So thank you for joining the Rankled Engineer. Hope you enjoyed this tour of my kitchen. Have a good one.